Bon was becoming a real hero very quickly amongst the tougher guys in the audience. They all wanted Bon to drink the wild life, you know, they loved him.
Scotland Yard said the body of 30-year-old Bon Scott was...
Then, in 1980, 5 years after he energized the band, Bon Scott was found dead.
A post-mortem will be carried out later today to establish the...
Bon Scott died drinking. His death nearly killed the band.
I don't think we'll ever get over that one, you know.
It's so hard to believe that the next day they're not there.
He'd been part of our lives for a long time, you know.
I was a bit numb, you know. I was really a bit numb, really.
Bon was Bon. He was always the same and never expected anything to happen to him. It was quite a shock.
We wanted to continue the band, but we just didn't have the will to at the time.
For AC/DC, the death of Bon Scott was more than the loss of a bandmate. It was a death in the family. And from the beginning, AC/DC was all about family. In 1963, Malcolm and Angus Young's unemployed father moved his family from their native Scotland to Australia. 10-year-old Malcolm and 8-year-old Angus were a pair of new kids looking to fit in.
I had to learn how they talked, and you know, because Australia's got a bit mix of Americana and a bit, you know, the old world English.
The youngest of 8 children, Angus and Malcolm remember a childhood with little money, but a wealth of music.
It was just like learning to read to us. It was all part of, you know, it was the norm. You know, we thought everyone lived like that.
Every few weeks there'd be a party for one reason or another. There was an old piano that we had, somebody would get on that, and they would sing all the old rock songs.
Malcolm and Angus grew interested in rock and roll, especially when older brother George formed his own band, the Easy Beats, and became a big hit down under. At the start of 1967, the Easy Beats scored a hit in America with Friday on My Mind. It went to 16 on the US singles charts. Angus and Malcolm were inspired by their big brother's rise to stardom.
Our family had just arrived in Australia, penniless. And 6 months later, you got TV cameras outside the doors, you got a famous brother in a famous band.
Eager to follow in their brother's footsteps, Malcolm and Angus quit school and joined separate bands. But in 1973, 20-year-old Malcolm suggested to 18-year-old Angus that they join forces.
No, I thought, well, why not? It's better than work, you know.
We told our parents we were both in the same band. They said, oh, I'll give you a week to survive, because we fought all the time.
When big brother George came home from a concert tour, he was impressed by what he heard.
All of a sudden the kid brothers were still the kid brothers, but my God, they knew how to play.
Angus and Malcolm's band needed a name to match their high-charged sound. Their Sister Margaret's sewing machine triggered a flash of inspiration.
Well, there was a sewing machine that had AC/DC on the back of it, and we would toss around names for weeks, and she just said it one night, and everyone went, that's good.
To the brothers, AC/DC implied power and energy, but a local cab driver let them know that AC/DC had another meaning.
Hey, you know what that means, don't you? You guys aren't all gay. I said, what? You looking for trouble, pal, you know? He said, no, seriously. Bisexual, it's AC/DC. I go, oh, we better change the name.
The name stuck, as did another gimmick, courtesy of Sister Margaret's sewing machine.
She said to Angus, you know, Angus, you're still more like a schoolboy. You know, you don't wear a schoolboy uniform. I think she said it jokingly. But the next thing, she was stitching up school suits for him.
It's a fun thing, you know. I said, oh, you can go as a schoolboy, then you can graduate and come back out in the jeans.
George, my other brother, he used to try and butter me up. He says, you'll be rich very quick. And of course, you know, at first I believed him. So I thought I'd better earn my keep, you know.
In 1974, brother George and fellow Easy Beats band member Harry Vanda were producing records for a small Australian label. And they decided to record AC/DC.
There was no sort of Do they have it or don't they have it? It was obvious that they had something.
AC/DC's first single was released in July 1974. The record was a local hit and led to a small tour, but Malcolm and Angus were not happy with their lead singer, Dave Evans.
You know, he'd go on with his makeup and he'd maybe even blow on kisses. We just grew not to like it.
Malcolm and Angus were looking for a new frontman when, in the summer of 1974, their future drove up, a.k.a. Ronald Bon Scott.
He was kind of weird. He pulled up in this old, beat-up 50s car, you know. You could barely see. You just saw this sort of maniac head and this, you know, this crazy guy coming flying down the road.
I'm hot, and when I'm not, I'm cold as ice.
Like the Young Brothers, Bon Scott was another expat raised in Australia.
When we met him for the first time, it was like we'd known him forever. No with Bon, no with us guys. He always became a brother.
Bon was a wild child, bound and determined to be a rock star.
All he wanted to do was be the singer in a band. You couldn't stop him once he made up his mind. That was what he wanted to do, and he just did it.
He dreamed of fame, but generally found trouble instead. By 1974, he'd already served time for assaulting a cop and had recently survived a near-fatal bike crash. Bon had already worked in local bands like the Valentines and Fraternity. To Malcolm and Angus, Bon looked and sounded like a perfect fit for AC/DC.
We knew Bon could sing rock and roll. And from that point, we kept pestering him. You know, would you like to come and sing?
See me right out of that sunset.
We just said, do you want to join? Without even playing with the guy. That's how confident we were that he was going to work with us.
'Cause I'm TNT, I'm dynamite.
Angus and Malcolm had no doubts about hiring Bon Scott to front AC/DC.
2 weeks later, we show up and we go, George, we've got a new singer. And he goes, what?
George felt his little brothers had lost their minds.
And Bon had an earring with a shark's jaw, I think, hanging off. It was about this big. Lost a couple of teeth from brawling, covered in tattoos. He looked like he'd been around the block more than a few times.
You know what I mean?
George was like, there's your man, no doubt. He says, that's reshaped the whole thing. You're a real rock and roll band now.
So into the fold came Bon Scott, and with him he brought a whole lot of stage presence. 28-year-old Scott was a perfect fit for AC/DC, hard-rocking and hard-living. His first appearance with the band was to be an omen of some serious hell-raising to come.
The first gig, you know, he's got a bottle of bourbon and he just juices it all, you know, and then he's got, you know, there's drugs and everything coming in. And I said to Malcolm, I said, he'll be lucky if he can walk, let alone sing, you know.
His behavior may have been one thing, but his performance was not to be overshadowed.
And we heard his voice proper then, and thought, geez, that guy's got some voice. He can scream, a great melody, he's got great feel.
AC/DC had found their voice and went into the studio to record. In January 1975, the band took their high-voltage tour across the Australian club circuit.
They were the Aussie bloke's idea of a good time. It was just hard and down and fast and mean. Rib-crunching, skull-crushing, sort of blistering rock and roll. And you know they weren't going to slip in a ballad on you.